How to do 25-mark essays in A-level philosophy. I have had many requests on my YouTube channel for a video about how to do 25-mark essays and asking what I mean by my acronym SEGARL, which I referenced in other videos, and I guess apparently I don't explain it anywhere. So here you go, here's a video, and I'm also making this for my students in case they ever miss the first lesson on how to do a philosophy essay or want to use this as a reference point for later. So here we go. This is just one way to do 25-mark philosophy essays. There's lots of good advice out there from people other than me. For example, in the Hodder textbook, you've got very good advice, I think at the back of textbook 1 about how to do philosophy essays well. Michael Lacewing also has some excellent resources on this. Big shout out to him, and you can find that by searching for Routledge philosophy handouts or searching for Michael Lacewing philosophy, A-level philosophy, and so on in his handout and accompanying material on exam technique, which is available for free, or you can purchase his textbook as well. He has some very useful information, his take and his tips. But here's mine. So here's another way to do them. It's called SEGARL. Why is it called SEGARL? Well, because it's such a bad acronym that I don't think anyone's going to steal it, and so it will forever be associated with me. No, that's a joke. I don't know why it's called SEGARL. I needed to make a word that was vaguely memorable, at least pronounceable, and it stands for the things I think you need in an essay plan. Yeah, sorry, it doesn't spell anything very memorable. Though in actuality it doesn't make a nice word like mind or noose or something like that. You can make your own one up. I've got better ones for A-level RS, but this is a philosophy one, SEGARL. So first thing to say, which I kind of already said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Students at A-level especially often want like their cookie cutter template. Give me just the way to do it. Give me the tricks. Give me the template I can use that will work. But hey, we're at A-level now. This is philosophy. We're getting closer to university and to being adult, reasoning, autonomous beings. You know, no one gave Socrates or Plato or Aristotle a cookie-cutter method of how to write their philosophy books. They just thought, they just discussed, they just read, and they just philosophized. They wrote down their ideas and really thought them through. So I want to put that right up front. You may actually have a better way. Try it out first. Try it especially if you're early in the course, try writing an essay your own way and see what comes back. See what your teacher says, see what marks you get. Because really I'm against cookie cutter methods. So this is take it if it's useful, leave it if it isn't. Okay, this is just one way to do them. There are many other ways, but this is a way that I have found helpful for playing the examination game. Okay, you're probably just desperate to get into the actual stuff now and stop waffling. Enough prologue waffle. Well, I enjoy prologue waffle, so okay, let's carry on. So S in SEGARL is for state, meaning state your answer to the question in the first sentence of your essay. I would really strongly encourage you to do this because, especially in an exam context, you know, you might think that philosophy examiners and A-level examiners are, you know, these extremely people with lots of leisure time on their hands in their ivory towers, taking, you know, a good hour to mark every philosophy essay that comes across their desk. They're not. Maybe you never thought that. Maybe you have no illusions about it. But you know, they're hard pressed. They're working other jobs. They're stressed out. They're squeezing it in amongst loads of other too many responsibilities and probably looking after children as well, having domestic arguments and so on. And they're just doing it for a little bit of extra cash and experience because it looks good on the CV apparently. And they're going to be reading fast. Okay, so give them what your thesis is, what you're going to be arguing, right up front at the start of the essay. Hit them with it right between the eyes at the top, and that reminds you as well, so you know, you get straight to the point. You know, I'm going to be arguing this statement, this thesis, which is an answer to the question, if you please, to the exact question, a precise answer to the question in front of you, not something vaguely related, not a general essay you've memorized. Answer the exact question in one sentence. So for example, if the question is, pick an example out of the air, random example, Is utilitarianism a helpful moral theory? Straight up front, yes, utilitarianism is a helpful moral theory, or no, it's not, or it's helpful up to a point. Say it at the start, because the rest of your essay is simply going to be expanding that and fleshing it out. And you go back to that at every point, you're referring back to that and making sure everything lines up with that thesis, so it's coherent and integrated and so on. More than any other subject you'll do at A level, a philosophy essay is about an argument. So the examiner needs to see what you're going to be arguing right at the start. Say it in the first sentence. And then E is for explain. Now, a brief explanation. I should have put brief in this PowerPoint. Some of my PowerPoints does say brief. A brief explanation of the theory or issue or issues under discussion in a paragraph. Maybe 2 paragraphs if it's really complicated and you really need to set out the boundary lines before you start getting into the analysis. But this is a bit like an intro, but it's not a historical context intro. This isn't a history essay. It's not an English essay. It's not any other kind of humanities essay. This is philosophy. So as you want to be getting into the argument, you've already broadcast what your argument is going to be in the first sentence. You want to be getting into the argument as soon as possible. And in a philosophy essay, you're only going to get up to 5 marks in a 25-mark essay for AO1. In other words, for assessment objective 1, for knowing stuff, for showing knowledge. And I mean, it's a bit crude to say that you're only picking that up in this first paragraph, but the point is the emphasis is on the analysis and the argument, not the knowledge of the issue, which you can just lift out of a textbook, okay? So just give your brief summary of the issues which you're going to be discussing in the body of the essay in a paragraph, 2 at most, but even then I would encourage you just to keep it to 1. So for example, if it's an essay on utilitarianism, 1 nice, relatively chunky paragraph at the start, just outlining what utilitarianism is and maybe the different forms of utilitarianism, but not going into super detail because you want to get into that argument as soon as you can. If you need to bring in more detail about individual aspects or versions of the theory and get really detailed for your analysis, do it later in the analysis. Bring it up when it's relevant to your argument. Okay, you could even get away with not doing this brief explanation, but I know students like intros, and it's helpful again, I think, to you for your brain to just outline quickly. Okay, here are the key issues. Here's what we're going to be talking about in a nutshell, in a paragraph. Then you can get into the meat. So then G is forgive. Why on earth is G forgive? What a weird word to have in an essay plan. Well, the reason it's forgive is because in A-level AQA philosophy, what you're going to be talking about in the body of the essay is going to really vary very much depending on what area of the specification it is and what you're actually answering a question about. So give is nice and vague and flexible. Rather than making it putting here like criticism or theory or something, give is a nice vague verb which can stand for give one of those things. So give a criticism if that's what's relevant to this particular essay, or give an argument, or give a theory. And which one to give will be clear based on which area of the specification you're doing. So let's take an example. Let's use moral philosophy again, saying you're writing an essay on a normative ethical theory, and it's just about one normative ethical theory. This would probably almost certainly be a criticism that you are giving here. So you outline briefly again, because you want to analyze it as soon and as much as possible, a criticism of the theory that you're being asked about. So say utilitarianism, Kantian ethics, or virtue ethics, and explain it. And this is in its new own paragraph, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a big paragraph. What you want to be big as possible, and where you're going to be picking up the majority of your marks, really, because so far you can get this all out of a textbook. Here's what I know about the theory, which I copied and pasted out of the textbook, or got ChatGPT to tell me. Don't do that. Oh, please, for the love of all that is good and true, do not do that. And then here's what I copied and pasted out of the textbook, a criticism of that theory. Now, A is for analyze. Now, this could be in the same paragraph. I'm not too hung up on this. Again, not cookie cutters. Think for yourself. It's philosophy. If it's a small paragraph you've written for the first give paragraph, maybe it could flow into the analysis, or maybe you could do a new paragraph. It doesn't matter too much as long as it's clear and I guess as long as the paragraphs aren't absolutely ginormous walls of text on the page. But anyway, A is for now, analyze that criticism. We need to know, the examiner needs to know, what do you think of it? And the language that they like to use on their mark scheme is, so you might be inclined to use it yourself in the actual essay, is, do you think it is weighty? Is this criticism or argument or theory, sorry, is what you brought up and explained in the G1 paragraph, what do you think of it? Does it make sense? Is it coherent? Is it accurate? Is it correct? And this will hopefully be a bit of a dialogue, a bit of a back and forth, because you can say, here's what I think of it, and don't be afraid, this is the subject to say that. This is the subject to say, I think, in my view. I wouldn't be careful about believing things, especially feeling things. I wouldn't feel things in a philosophy essay. That gets a bit tactile and creepy. But certainly think things, and don't be afraid of that personal pronoun, first person I. That's fine to use. I always encourage my students to use it. Yeah, so here's what I think about it, whether I think it's right or wrong, and why, please, because ... for these reasons. And then to do proper philosophy, you've got to think, well, what would someone who disagrees with me say? So the utilitarians, if I'm siding against utilitarianism with the criticism, might argue back this, or one of them in particular, if I'm looking at a particular form of utilitarianism, might argue back this. Here's my response. Or say you've raised a criticism of a moral theory, just as an example, and then you have disagreed with that criticism. The person who was making the criticism in the first place, Nozick or Moore or someone, whoever, might say back in reply to me this. However, my response would be this. So then there you're doing arguments, counter arguments, and counter arguments. And if you raise a counter or a counter argument, never leave it open if it doesn't agree with your statement at the start. Never leave it unresponded to. That's the biggest no-no, because then you've got an incoherent essay. Everything you always have to end each chunk of analysis on a note which agrees with your original statement at the start. I'd hope that was obvious, but I guess, you know, this is tricky business, philosophizing. Maybe some students need to be reminded of it. Never open an issue that's counter to your own view and then fail to deal with it, because the examiner's just going to see, oh, well, you're not making a coherent argument there. You haven't dealt with this. And by the way, if you change your mind, that's fine during the course of your analysis. That's completely fine. Don't pretend you think something you don't, because you won't argue it very well. If it's a homework essay, go back and change it at the start and redo it. And even in an exam, hopefully that won't happen in an exam because you've planned the essays and have essay plans up your sleeve. Even in an exam, coherence is the most important thing. So if you find you've gotten it the wrong way around and you've changed your mind, you've got to go back, I'm afraid. Otherwise, yeah, you're not gonna get the marks. We want coherence. We want something that's argued the same all the way through, because that's the absolute key thing in caps. Make your own argument. This is what a philosophy essay is. It's not a big knowledge dump show off. It's not here's all the stuff I read out of a textbook. It's here's my argument about the question, about the issue at hand. Just on textbooks though, you might be saying to me, well, where do I get my ideas for analysis? Yes, I know this is the hardest bit. It's the bit you get the most marks for, but it's also the hardest bit. Well, like I said earlier, you get your ideas from analysis, from reading, from discussing the ideas with your classmates, and from thinking about it. That's what philosophers do. So read as much as you can while you're studying the course, the textbook and extra stuff your teacher recommends and stuff you find by yourself. Discuss as much as you can in class. Join in. That's why those discussions happen, so you get a chance to develop your ideas and hear people who disagree with you and argue back with them in a polite and genial way. And, you know, do it outside the classroom as well. Have these discussions, have them at home with your family, have them with your friends, have them with your classmates outside of class. Go to philosophy club, do the extra stuff. The more you put in, the more you'll get out. Wow, this is sermonic here, but yeah, I've had some caffeine. No, I haven't even had caffeine today. R is for repeat. Repeat what? Well, repeat G and A. So in another new paragraph, please, if you're doing my method, give another criticism, argument, or theory. Another thing that relates back to the issue at hand, and outline what it is, and then analyze that. Okay. So this is the basic unit of a philosophy essay. Here's an idea about the issue under discussion, and here's my analysis of it. And how many times do you want to repeat that unit? Well, maybe the absolute lowest, if you're doing massive monster detailed analysis running to multiple paragraphs, although this could just be one big paragraph. It depends. It has to be guided by how much you think and have to say about the issue. Maybe 2 GA units, so repeat once. Maybe at the absolute upper limit, if you're doing a very broad essay without huge amounts of depth, or perhaps chronologically going through a sequence of arguments that appeared in time in the order they appeared, maybe 5 times. Here's a criticism, argument / theory, e.g. a JTB essay. You might be doing this quite a lot, going through the different theories of what knowledge is, or an argument for the existence of God essay. You might choose to do it in such a way where you keep giving new arguments of the variety that you're examining and then analyzing them one by one. That's one way to do it. Or in those essays, you can summarize the arguments in brief at the start and then do criticisms bit by bit. But yeah, I'd say about 5 upper limit. The sweet spot though seems to be about 3. There are exceptions to this rule, but the examiners say that they like breadth or depth. They'll happily have either. In my experience, and if you actually look in detail at the examiners' reports, they actually prefer depth. Whatever they say, they prefer depth. So I'd say about 3 GA units, so G1, A1, G2, A2, G3, A3, I sometimes call them with my students, is the sweet spot for enough depth in a philosophy essay, certainly a 25 marker in an exam context, written in about 50 minutes. So repeat G to A 3 to 5 times, and then you've made the same argument all the way through. Don't change what you're arguing. You can raise counterpositions, reasons people might disagree with you, but then you deal with them every time. So your argument is consistent and coherent all the way through, and integrated and other lovely synonymous buzzwords. And that means at the end, in a single short, it only needs to be very short. If you run out of time, as long as it's there, it needs to be there. That's what's most important, but it could just be a sentence. You land on your backed up conclusion at the end of the essay in a short paragraph. As I have shown, because of blah, 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 and blah, 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 this is the case. And it is just a very little brief summary of what you've said. So the examiner's reminded again that that was what you'd said at the start, and you've argued it consistently all the way through, but also dealt with the arguments against your position. So there's SEGARL for those that wanted it. And for any students who want to refer back to this that I teach in classroom settings, let's quickly do just some examples if you want in the rest of this video, or one example. Say you got, does utilitarianism provide a helpful way of making moral decisions? Which I think was some actual question on some AQA A-level philosophy exam somewhere at some time. I think it's the first one. It's usually the first one I get my year 12s doing moral philosophy to do. How would SEGARL apply? Well, like I said earlier already, S for state. I think utilitarianism does or does not provide a helpful / unhelpful way of making moral decisions. Hang on. Actually, you can just cut out helpful from that. Apologies. Yeah, and it just does or does not. You don't need to do a variant on that word. Never mind. And note that this is using the exact terms of the question, answering the exact question in front of you. Golden rule of all exams everywhere, as my old maths teacher used to tell me at school, and it's stuck with me ever since. Probably the only useful thing I got from him. No, I'm joking, Mr. Cooper. Sorry about that. RTFQ. Read the flipping question. The golden rule of all exams. You want to answer the exact question in front of you, not a question a bit like it or a vaguely related adjacent question, the exact one in front of you. So use the words in the question. Why not? It'll look a lot better to the examiner. Okay, then E, explanation, brief explanation of utilitarianism is this theory from Bentham. I wouldn't trot out the whole hedonic calculus. You could, if you know them all, you could say them in one sentence, 7 words, yeah, fine, with commas in between them. Mill's version is this. Hare and Singer developed it into this. Very, very brief, like a sentence each, or a sentence or 2 each. Doesn't need to be lots, because that's not where you're picking up the marks. That's just just setting out the battle lines, as it were, getting up to 5 marks, because then you jump into this. Here's a criticism of utilitarianism, say the tyranny of the majority criticism, or something like that. But now, this is the key bit, analysis. I think that this criticism is, let's use the language of the exam mark scheme. It's weighty, or it's not weighty. Or you could say it's effective, or it's, you could use lovely battle metaphors, like it destroys the theory, don't go over the top. It rebuts it. Well, that depends really on the contents. Find some nice adjectives and verbs there, but weighty is a nice one from the actual mark scheme. But be dialogical. Think in dialogical units where your analysis is a conversation. A utilitarian could respond to this by saying, here's how they would defend it. Or if you're siding with utilitarianism, the critic could respond, I in turn would respond this. So think in units of 3. Philosophy happens in dialogue, and so you want, well, it's quite Hegelian, but thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I say this, you could say back, my response is this. Just like in class discussion, that would happen. That's how philosophy happens. So do as much of that analysis as you can, in as much detail as possible. The way to make your essays better is to be better at doing this. Go into more depth, be more precise, bring more counter arguments into play. That's how philosophy essays get better and climb up the mark scheme. And then repeat that to discuss the criticisms, weight them, and make an argument all the way through. Argument, argument, argument. I've said it enough now. It's the most important thing. You are arguing through the essay what your case is. You're not just regurgitating or juxtaposing positions. You're analysing them and then incorporating them, your analysis, into your own overall argument. And then land on a conclusion. I think this because I've shown blah, blah, blah. Now, there is one other way to do it on this method, which I alluded to earlier. You can also, let's skip to the next slide. You can also this won't work for every area of the specification, but if it's something where there's been a development chronologically, as in through time, like utilitarianism, like say the ontological argument or something like that, you can use as your G's, you can give different versions of the theory or the argument or what have you, and analyze them as you go. And that will lead to a few more GA units, actually not in the case of utilitarianism so much, but say if it was ontological argument in metaphysics of God, or the cosmological argument, this is an alternative way, or different theories of knowledge. So this would be, still state your answer at the start, this is what I think, but now here's version 1, this is Bentham's utilitarianism, and then analyze it there and then. And you will have to bring in criticisms here, so it's not too different, but the difference is you're dividing up the different versions of the theory or argument that you're examining in the essay, and then putting them in their own sections in the essay. So now we could go on to Mill's utilitarianism, Mill's rule utilitarianism or weak rule utilitarianism, and then analyze that as you've come to it, because it's different, it's similar in some ways and different in other ways from Bentham's. And again, Singer's preference utilitarianism is this. Again, it's similar but different, and then analyze it as it comes up, bringing in the relevant criticisms. Okay, that's another way to do it. And if it's, say, arguments for the existence of God, this is where you're going, here's the first one, and then here's my analysis with relevant criticisms. Here's another one, and sometimes they'll have been developed in response to criticisms of previous arguments. That's why it's quite useful to go through chronologically and then analyze it, and analyze each one as you go. But again, it's still the same principle. It's the red stuff. It's the analysis here on this slide. It's red at least. That is really what's getting you the marks. So make sure those sections are expanded and have as much philosophical meat and as much of philosophical merit as possible in them. And then you conclude at the end. Okay. Oh yeah, here's the mark scheme just to show you why I've been saying these various things that I have. They want a sustained argument. This is why I'm going on about arguments. It's all about the argument in philosophy. You can actually get people's names wrong and misattribute arguments, names of philosophers, and so on, and even names of arguments, as long as you say what the argument is correctly, and still get full marks in theory, because it's the argument, the ideas, the analysis of the ideas, not the names of the different people that get you the marks. That's really not so important as what you're arguing. A complete and comprehensive response to the question, the content is correct. Well, no surprises there. You might see that as contradicting what I just said, but they do say you can get full marks even with misattributing arguments and getting the wrong names of philosophers. So yeah, the philosophical content is correct, the argumentative content is correct, and the student shows detailed understanding, detail, get it from reading, get it from doing your homework, and so on and so forth. Look, integrated, so everything fits with everything. Precise, they say precise about 3 times, so be as precise as possible. Here's the weighting thing. It can be a nice tactic to raise a less weighty argument and then a more weighty one. That can show weighting. That can be quite clever. So crucial arguments and less crucial ones. That's the nuance. That's not just treating everything in the same way, but this is a more effective criticism. This is a less one, and so on. All the doorbell's gone, so I need to pause briefly. Excuse me. Okay, brief interlude there, but we're back on. Just before I move on from this slide, actually, just a little note about this word integration. So Joe Livingston, I think he's called, shout out to Joe Livingston, and then shout out to another philosophy and RS teacher and tutor whose website is, I think it's A-level philosophy and religion .com. Let me just check that quickly. Yeah, A-level philosophy and religion.com, whereas loads of free content, by the way, another good source of free content recapping the knowledge content, if we want to call it that, of the A-level philosophy and indeed religious studies, different specs. He has a thing about this word integration, and emphasizes the value in essays of making sure you show, when you're raising criticisms and counter arguments and so on, or arguments, precisely how they apply to the theory or the original argument or the issue under discussion. So you know which part it applies to, and therefore whether if it's a crucial or less crucial criticism. Now fair enough, I see what he's getting at there, and I think there's some value to that, but I wouldn't, for myself, I wouldn't get too hung up on that. For me, integration just means every part of your argument integrates, so it fits with the rest of what you're saying, your overall argument. So you're making a coherent argument. Everything you say fits together with everything else you say. That's how I understand integration. It's about how your whole essay fits together, so you don't suddenly develop multiple personality syndrome and start arguing in favor of a different position from the one you were originally defending. You stick to your guns and your line of argument all the way through. And like I've said enough times now in this video, when you raise a counter position, these words are good, robustly defend your own position against it in that back and forth that philosophy is, and analytic discussion is composed of. So yeah, integration, make sure you show you know precisely which parts of arguments you're talking about, and whether therefore what's up for discussion is crucial or less crucial, weighty or less weighty. But also just make sure that you are presenting a coherent and integrated overall argument where everything you say connects to everything else, and there's no odd bits which don't fit into or fit under your overall thesis. That's what I'd have to say about that. Oh yeah, and use technical philosophical language. Hopefully that goes without saying. Last slide then. Maybe I might just come in under half an hour. We'll see. Just a few more tips to finish off. So just the point that you can argue whatever you want as long as you're consistent and coherent and argue it well and robustly. The examiner doesn't have to agree with you. They can give full marks to an essay that's completely against their own view and position. But the point is, because it's not what you say, it's how well you say it, if you like. Bit of simplification, but it's about the quality of your argument, not necessarily whether the examiner agrees with you. Interrogating the terms of the question is often a very useful tactic. So make sure that if there's ambiguity in what the terms in the question, the words in the question are, define them in your essay if possible, if you're able to do that. If the words in the title mean this, then this is my view because of this. if they mean this, then this is my view. Or on this particular understanding of the word blah, my view is such and such because. That's interrogating the terms of the question. That's to do with answering the exact question set. I'm going to be a tiny bit over half an hour, but only a little bit. You can argue for nuanced theses. In other words, it's not a straightforward yes or a no, but it's a yes but or a no but or a sort of somewhere in between. And that can score well. Just make sure, as usual, you flesh that out as precisely as possible. So you show why you've gone for a kind of halfway house position. Don't just do it vaguely, in which case it won't score highly. Oh, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. I partially agree. If that's just vague and you don't explain exactly in what manner you partially agree and why, then it won't score highly. But if you can nuance things well with the backed up, justified arguments in detail, then that can be good. By the way, if you don't have a nuanced view, just say straightforwardly yes or no and argue for that. Students often want structures because around state schools there are often lots of mnemonics and templates for essays and paragraphs and things, which, to be honest, I don't have much time for, like peel paragraphs and so on, point, evidence, exclamation, link, because you should just be learning to read and think and write and not need these frameworks. However, if you really want one for analysis in those analysis sections of essays, try arcs, try an arc. Argument, response, counter response. Never leave a response open if you haven't counted it. Another way of passing this or setting this out might be argument, counter argument, counter argument. That would work too. But I'm just trying to make the point yet again that this philosophy is dialogical. So you kind of want units of 3 where it's like, here's what I think, this is what someone else could say, this is my argument back. Try and use that to expand your analysis. Oh, and just one more point on that, about the textbook thing again. Yes, actually, technically, you may be able to get all of these out of textbooks, arguments, responses to them, and counter responses, or in the language of the Hodder textbook, perhaps, argument/theory, criticism, and then further discussion of the criticism, like response to the criticism. Yeah, so let's be humble here. People have been discussing these questions for thousands of years. As an A-level student, it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to say anything vastly original. But what the examiner is looking for is, can you organize the material in a sophisticated and coherent way, where you're going for the most detailed possible version of the argument that you're making. So this is why I keep saying reading and discussion, because you may actually be able to find all of these criticisms and counter-criticisms in the textbook in wider reading. You probably will. And then the trick then is just to arrange them in a way where that you're not just putting them alongside each other, but you're making them talk to each other. That's the bit the examiner the textbook can't do for you. It can't tell you what to think. It can't tell you which side you're on. So you need to be able to give reasons for why you're on one side rather than the other. And that is what you get from thinking about it and talking about it in class. So practice, practice, practice. Your best, if you're preparing for an exam right now, your best source of revision for essays and preparation for essays is to make essay plans based on essays you've already written for your teacher, homework essays, which hopefully you've already had feedback on. So you've already done the question, maybe not in exam conditions, but you've done the question, you've had a go, you've worked out what you think, your teacher's looked at it, given you feedback. So from that you can make an even better essay plan in case it comes up in the exam. Might have to be a bit shorter to fit it in 50 minutes depending on how much you worked on the essay, and hopefully you've done the essays. That's why it's good to work consistently throughout the year. Naming no names. Oh yes, so yeah, I've basically said this now. The best way to improve your analysis is to maximize your grades, so read as much as you can and participate in class discussions, brackets, and work consistently throughout your A-level and not just do a massive push at the end. But hey, if that's what it's come to and you're doing this for last minute revision, accept reality and have the courage to change what you can. You're just gonna have to make do with that and cram and put the accelerator on now. But yes, the didactic pronouncement at the end of this is, so get reading and get discussing, and also all the very best and God luck if you're about to sit an exam, and have fun and enjoy and work hard if you've used this to prepare to write a homework essay. Thank you very much. Good night, hasta la vista, and God bless. Bye.